Thank you for joining us on the RP Experience. I'm your host, Andrew Regenhard. Today we have Brian Chapman, one of our preferred partners. He's with Chapman Insurance Group. So welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, we're pumped. So Brian, a little bit about Brian. Brian is a lifelong resident of Southwest Florida, and he's the CEO of Chapman Insurance Group. Brian graduated from FGCU and founded Chapman Insurance Group, a Southwest Florida independent insurance agency that provides insurance products for both commercial and residential insurance here in Florida. Brian is active in his church, local little leagues, and loves the whole salt life about Southwest Florida and what it has to offer. He and his wife, Julie, are parents to their 5 beautiful children and are currently residing here in Fort Myers. So welcome, Brian. I'm pumped to talk about insurance, obviously, but just talk about the growth. Talk about how you handle 5 kids. That can't be easy. That's a whole nother job and CEO of a whole nother thing there. So you grew up here, right?
Yep.
Why insurance?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, I thought if I was going to have 5 kids, I'd have them come work for me and I could retire one day.
You got 5 insurance agencies or insurance
locations, right? No, I think it's actually pretty simple. Furniture salesman, that was my grandfather. Rhodes Furniture way back in the day. My dad got into a State Farm insurance opportunity.
Oh, okay.
And I grew up around it. Now, just because I grew up around it doesn't mean I knew about it. But when you grow up around it and you can see the lifestyle, that there were triggers along the way that kind of developed or maybe put a little, idea in your mind, like maybe I could do this one day.
Right.
And so that's really the simplest way that it happened. Now, I ultimately went to work for my dad, and there's other things there.
Right.
We have the same name. He's a senior. I'm a junior. So I thought
Did you continue that on with one of the 5?
I thought I was going to be a State Farm agent.
No. Did you continue the junior, senior?
I didn't.
No.
Didn't.
Oh, okay.
There was a lot of debate about it. You look back and you think maybe I should have gone with the 3rd.
Yeah.
Actually, I did call my dad when we were not going to do it. When we were not going to continue it.
Yeah.
I said it's just going to bother you. So, because was it more important to him or to me? It was probably more important to him.
Right.
And so I just, But
right.
Yeah, he was like, nope, won't impact me at all. I said, okay.
Perfect. So you went into State Farm too then, right?
I did, but as working at an agency, so working at a retail office for my dad, thought that the career path was, I bleed red, let's go State Farm red. Florida market made some changes kind of early in my career as far as, State Farm's involvement here. And ultimately ended up going the independent route, which is a I don't have one carrier that is just my only company that we write with. So
where is Chapman Insurance Group today? Give us an update on, currently how large you guys are, where you service, your team, everything.
Well, in July, we close on a Naples location. So that'll be our awesome. First step into Naples market. We're actively writing here, but don't have a physical location. We started over an hour north in Port Charlotte, then Punta Gorda, then Cape Coral, then Fort Myers. So you can see how we're kind of moving south down the coast. So 5 locations, 72-ish employees, 72-ish because some are part-time, some are full-time. So you kind of have to aggregate them out. We really have 80 people.
But a half and a half makes a whole.
Yeah, half and half makes a whole. So 72 employees. Footprint-wise, anything, our strike zone, Sarasota to Marco Island.
Yeah,
so.
He teaches Little League, as you can see.
Yeah,
strike zone. All right, so insurance it's a hot topic right now, obviously, but it's always kind of been a hot topic. What's the biggest misconception about insurance that kind of plagues even the United States?
Well, you look at, I think, a mindset shift in the last 20 years where probably the leader of it was Geico with the marketing. No insurance company really marketed at the level that Geico came out, and now you have multiple companies spending billions of dollars a year on marketing. And I think probably the misconception is that the mindset everything is tied to price or discount. And in every other aspect, you get what you pay for. But when it comes to insurance, it's become almost one of those things where, well, you can still get what you pay for, but pay less. It's like, well, you don't do that in the medical world. You don't do that in the finance world. Like, you don't pay less and get more. Like, it doesn't. And I think that misconception that exists, I'm not saying we all buy it. and we all
Right,
consume the product of insurance. But at some point, you get what you pay for, and I think it's interesting. The dynamic starts and changes throughout life. So, 18-year-old, I'm on my parents' policy. 22, 24-year-old, graduates school and is on the life. It's all about price. And then sometime when you realize I actually have something that I want to protect, there's like this trigger, and typically mid 30s, late 30s, right. And then people are like, oh, I can't do this myself online and get a better price. Like I can get the same price, but trust someone else to do it. And then it's like all of a sudden becomes important. It's kind of an interesting dynamic that takes place, but I think that is all tied back to really well done marketing that didn't exist 20 years ago.
Would you say, is that something you'd want to change from you're getting more but paying less, or?
Well, I just think the mindset now is like, if I can save like 10 or 15%, I've got to do it. Like I have to do it. And it's like, okay, but you're changing. So what's different? Is it just the price that's different and it's 10 or 15% less? It's like, or are you buying less? Right. And that's when it's like, oh, okay, it's not the same coverages. Right. So are you buying less, or are you getting a better deal? And I think that has gotten very murky, very confusing.
So what would be one thing you'd change about the insurance agency or insurance industry?
And it's a very good question, and it's not one thing, unfortunately. If anything exists today more than ever, even with the connectivity of the world, and everything's so interconnected today, at your fingertips, we're all more impatient, that whole reality of it. There's still this tremendous disconnect between the insurance company and the client. And ultimately, that's where we succeed as an agency, right? Because we've got these big companies that cannot relate with a customer, a retail person on the street. Like it's like ivory tower versus the Pilgrim's Village. I mean, it's just such a disconnect, and so that disconnect could be less, and we still have a vital role there. A good example of this, Hurricane Ian. Claims come through, right? Blow through, destroy, tens of thousands of homes, and it's when the company then has to act like we always act, where they're actually working with clients, right? And their minds are blown. Like their communication's terrible, their connectivity's terrible. Send me this document, send me that document. Nobody calls them back, and it's like that's how much disconnect exists, and that's where we step in and try to create a line of communication. But it's just a perfect example in my mind of how disconnected carriers are from their customers. They really don't. They don't know them. They don't care about them. I mean, one of the two. But it's amazing.
Do you think it's just because of the scale, and do you think it's because it's so number based? Like they just are looking, these dollars. They don't care about it. Like it's more like when a big corporation has 1,000 employees. They're just numbers at that point. They don't know they don't know. Is that the reason, or is it just because they're just trying to make a dollar in a million different spots rather than taking care of the client?
I have a little bit of a biased answer because I'm in the industry. I think they mean well. I think they just don't know how to. Right. I think that's the majority of it. There are a few that it's literally just a money play, and it's a business. An insurance company is a business. They have to make a profit, and that's what they look at. But there are a lot of other companies that have a heartbeat, and they actually look at me as their customer, which is an interesting dynamic. An insurance company looks at me as their customer, and then I provide, the client to them, and I'm their customer. It's a different dynamic, which those companies get it. They understand the value of understanding their customer, and they get that information from me.
Yeah.
Right. So,
how do I look at insurance as an asset rather than a liability?
I think there's a couple ways. It's always going to be a liability on the balance sheet or on the operating P&L because it's an expense.
Cost,
yeah. But I'll give you two real ways. Outside of just the physical damage to a building, there's two other major components in most policies. If you're a realtor selling product that someone's going to buy as a investment product, right? So they're going to rent out the building, rent out the location. A part of that policy, not just the physical damage to the building when the wind blows, but is your loss of rent. So it maintains your income after an event. So there's income that you would not have had because you can't rent the building while you're renovating or the home while you're renovating. And then the other side of it is really the business interruption, which is more so really strategic to business owners that like my company, a mortgage company of any company. The only one that gets excluded from this is maybe the contractor world, because they seem to get busier after a storm, not less.
Yeah.
But if your physical location is harmed, let's say a fire, for example, and eliminate the catastrophic issue, you've got a ton of extra expense to move to a new location. That's insurable, right? That's business interruption or business extra expense. And then your loss of income, because you're not able to sell product, you're not able to service product. How much revenue are you losing? And so that's kind of how you turn it from a merely more of an asset than a liability.
Right.
So
do you think AI is going to have a factor into insurance, and will it kind of disrupt the market?
I think it already has. Now,
in what way?
Well, in a couple ways, where AI can capture information much quicker than you and I can through a computer, right? Trying to find data, find information. So that's one disruption. I think a lot of times people might have the perception that it's going to change the buying process, and it's being tried right now. It's being tried in so many ways, and there's been a lot of failures. Amazon tried it, Google tried it, Tesla's tried it, and yet where are they? Like, where's their ranking? Because if those three have already tried it, and then you would think a very quick order they'd be at the top of the list, right? They would somehow figure out the right way to do this, and those are the deepest pockets of anyone in America,
right?
And so if they are trying it and yet they can't make it profitable, then I think that tells you it's going to be a little while. Now, there are a lot of companies. The problem is if it has wheels, it's a little bit more measurable. It's a little bit easier because you've got a set value of coverage for the vehicle, and you have a driver, but then the driver varies, right? If it's not an automated driving vehicle, then their driver,
right.
And right now, I mean, there's so many components that go into deriving if this is a safe driver that have nothing to do with driving. It's habits of their life.
Right.
So I think it's going to take somebody.
The whole past predicts the future part, right?
It is. So how do you pay your bills? How timely are you in paying your bills? Like, how much do you owe in debt? And like financial parts into driving. And it's like, well, we can see a pattern of, and they create all these algorithms and thousands of variables. And I think that part can be, they've spent 20 years doing that now, I'd say, and trying to get that dialed in, and yet they still don't have it dialed in. Right? And it could be like a Facebook play because they have more data on people than just about anybody. Google has more on the search side, but Facebook has more on the personal side. So, disruption. I don't think there's any one company that comes in and takes all of the market share, because then you lose diversification. Correct. Right. You can't write all of Florida, because then any loss you're impacted. Right. So they're trying to figure out, how do we cherry pick, which is a technical term in the insurance world, and how do we grab the best so that we don't lose our rear ends on this. And they haven't figured out how to do it yet. And gosh, I mean, there's so much information they can grab at their fingertips, but they haven't figured out how to do it yet. So yeah, there's disruption, but there's these online only direct home writers that haven't figured out you can get a quote in 2 minutes. Right. Well, all of those clients that move there, if you go look at the financials of these carriers, they keep getting investments, but they're not making any money. So it's like, back. Hey, something's gonna happen. Something's given,
yeah.
Yeah, and actually a lot of those clients that have done that, now they're getting double, triple digit rate increases, and they're calling us back. So it was just a bunch of wasted effort to see if it could work.
Short term, not long term kind of play.
Really, I think insurance is actually the most boring industry, because it is a long-term investment. For a carrier that is going to be here for a while, they're not coming in to make a buck tomorrow and leave. It's a long-term investment. And that's why you have so many insurance names, and you go look at them. Some of it's because of the marketing, but they've been around for 100 years. It's not, it's not like.
I understand that. I mean, obviously, we just made it as a joke, but past predicts the future. If they've been around for a long time, they're going to continue to be around probably, right? And you know, and they're going to probably continue to grow. So I want to talk about how you've grown such a big business down here. What was the span from when you technically founded, Chapman Insurance Group to where you're at today? What's the span?
2009 was officially, it was actually April Fool's Day on April 1st of 2009. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. And then really...
Did you make it as a joke and then you're like, oh, I should do this?
I didn't even think about it. I just said, April, you got to pick a day.
Yeah.
Like, it could have been whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe I could change the story, but it was April 1st. And, it was myself and two other people and a couple $100,000 that I had stocked away and, met payroll, met our expense obligations. It was a perfect time, but a terrible time. You look at 2009, it was probably the most real recession we've ever had, and at least in my lifetime that I really felt.
Right.
And since really, maybe Great Depression, 60s, and then that, I mean, the market was just in chaos.
Correct.
And I think what happened when that, in that moment in 2009, I mean, employment was easy. You could find people to hire. It was really inexpensive to rent as long as the landlord was solid, because so many things were being taken back over by the bank. So the opportunity was there. Everybody was fearful. So that was the moment in 2009. I mean, I really wasn't. I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, we're going.
Yep.
And I didn't have anything to lose because I didn't have any clients.
Right.
So 2009 and, just good people.
Right.
Really, I had 3 people in that first year still with me today, all 3 of them. And I think that speaks to how important those people were, and they would have been successful at any company. They were just the right people. And that was the first building block, right? And
right.
then, the building blocks along the way. We never have acquired anyone, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, because I've never done it.
Right.
A lot of acquisitions are happening in our space, but I think, just slowly chipping away at it, one bite at a time. And in a lot of ways, it's, growth is, it when you look back, and I think a lot of the perspective is like it's a flash in the pan. It just like, just happened. It's like, oh my gosh, like there's so many things that had to go right.
Yeah.
And so many people that had to be at the right place at the right time to find the opportunity to come work for you. And, it was just a marathon, really. I mean, there wasn't just like one moment.
Yeah, it doesn't happen overnight.
No,
right.
No. And it's really not, I mean, as boring as it is, it's not like, the growth part of it is long hours. Long nights.
If you put in the work, you'll see the fruit, right?
For the things that I'm not gifted at in the early days, I made up for it just by doing it, just long hours.
So you mentioned the people, right? People so critical. Okay. You have a marketing presence, with real producers, but like a lot of places, right? So talk about how critical marketing is from a business growth standpoint.
So there's your traditional marketing. And then there's the ground game. I think the ground game is probably the most important. The ground game is every business is different. If you're a national, company, different products, maybe this doesn't apply. But if you're a multi-location company and you're trying to get embedded into the community, the ground game is where it all happens. So you've got to go to events. You have to get plugged in. You have to relate with people. You don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You just have to be a little bit personable and be consistent. And if you are consistent, it's amazing how quickly people will rally around you and support you. And that was the first 5 years. We never actually spent a true traditional, I shouldn't say never say never. It was a very small portion of our budget was tied to, traditional phone book or Google, or it was just such a side thing to what we were doing. Then that changed but that changed with scale, where you had to figure out, okay, I can reach a certain level. The ground game can get me so far. Now I got to figure out a pass. And this is a football, right? I do like baseball. But the passing game was, okay, let's build our brand. Let's build our presence. And
when was that tipping point? How would you describe it? Was it a number of, a finance number? It was a feeling. Like, what would you say from a business owner standpoint? I guarantee so many people are out there and they're maybe right at that or almost to that or just past that?
I think the tipping point was in the community that we were in at the time, because we started up in Charlotte County, and we had just about touched every event, every networking. We were doing all of the ground game, and we had excess dollars to spend, and we realized, okay, we've tied a percentage of expense to marketing. Our gross is growing, so we have more money in marketing. Let's spend it, and we've done everything we can do. We're at every event. There's really not any other networks we should probably consider at this point, because what we're doing is working. Let's try to figure out how to make the brand bigger.
So you didn't get distracted. You kept doing what you were doing to the point where you were pretty much maxed out and you had overflow. But I think that's probably what people need to look at, right?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, your number of leads and the growth that you have is all tied to that.
Right.
But yet you want more, and you're trying to figure out, how do I attract more customers? And that was the moment where we said, we've got to go direct to the consumer in some way. We've got to get into the consumer household,
Correct.
Not just a referral from someone else, because we've gone as far as we can go with that. Yeah. So let's go find people that have been in their home for 10 years and they don't need a realtor to refer them because they're not selling their house and not buying a house. Right. How do we get to them? And so it was another client base that we could capture and touch. Obviously,
running a business is scary parts to it. What's the scariest thing about running an insurance agency? Is it like, do you get scared because the storm's coming, or like, or you get excited? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, certainly a storm disrupts, our business in many ways, and it is difficult to navigate through that. I think most recently that's probably the greatest challenge we've faced is, three locations damaged, had to relocate 3 offices, all the cost to repair the 3 locations, but we had good insurance, right? And
it was an asset, not a liability.
Yeah. And so we're in the middle of that right now. It's disruption, but it's not forever. I think the greatest challenge is for all businesses. It's not just insurance agency. Is you have to create a culture and maintain that culture no matter what, and drive home the culture no matter what. And, right person, right seat. If you have the right person that adapts to your culture, they're the right person. And if you don't have those right people, you've got to make some really tough decisions. Mm-hmm. They're not really tough decisions, but we make them tough on our own minds. But you have to hold the culture. You do not make exceptions for that. And you also have to hold the culture up as if it is the 10 commandments of the company, because that is the morale, that is the excitement, it's
the
just
pillars. Yeah.
And momentum is a powerful thing. When you have that momentum of that culture, you feel unstoppable. Mm-hmm. When you don't have it, you feel like you're never going to get it back. Mm-hmm. And it's the most important thing.
Yeah. From a business leader standpoint, what was that? It doesn't have to be the biggest, but like, what's kind of that biggest mistake you've ever, like the biggest mistake you've made?
Man, putting it all out there, huh? Just airing out the dirty laundry.
Exactly.
I don't think it's like a shock. Probably, I think every growing business has. I mean, you think about day one for me, and it was working directly with clients, right? And then you fast forward to today, where I have probably a short list of 15 that I work with, right? Mm-hmm. So, that transition over 15 years or 14 and a half years of how do I redefine what I am and who I am to this organization? Mm-hmm. Because it's changed so many times. Like, I literally have to be a chameleon, over that 15 years. I mean, I'm not even like a shade of the color I started, because and I have a lot less hair and I have a lot more wrinkles but yeah, I mean, it as you go through that, if you try to hold on to something too long, and this is the biggest mistake, you're just holding yourself back, and you have to let go of it. Mm-hmm. And I use the term a lot within my company of delegate and elevate. If you have something that you're not good at, but you're doing, it's not something that charges your batteries, that absolutely crushes you. Right. It's like your battery's at 2% because you just did that.
Yeah.
then can you delegate it and elevate yourself? So can you put controls around it? Can you describe what it is? Can it be replicated? And because the reality is you're probably going to give you can find someone in our organization that loves it and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yet you're here suffering through this. So you've got to be willing to let go of responsibilities. You have to be willing to trust the people that have those responsibilities. And if you don't let go of it, you're going to just stagnate yourself.
Yeah.
So that's my greatest mistake is those moments where I didn't let go of something, and then you scratch your head and say, wait, no, what? And then you get to a point where it's like, why am I still doing this?
Right. You're like, I hate it. I suck at it. It's costing me a lot of time. Like, let's find someone better. How do you think the overall state of the insurance in Florida is? We're post-hurricane, 6 months.
We're post-hurricane. There was huge legislation that was passed in Florida, significant legislation, January 1st effective, and then some of it trails out. It's effective throughout this year. 2 years from now, if it does what we think it's going to do, we'll be in a much better place than we are right now. Right now, we are in disarray. Mm-hmm. We have companies that are on the verge of not making it, not because of Ian, because of prior things that were in place before Ian. We have insurance issues as far as finding insurance, particularly if there's open claims. But the state as a whole is plagued by availability. We just don't have enough carriers in Florida writing property insurance. Auto rates are on the climb because of the litigation that's involved. I mean, you think about an auto accident 25 years ago, the first thought wasn't to call an attorney, and it is today.
Yeah.
Right. So if an attorney's involved, not discrediting what they do, but the claim will be more.
Right.
It's just going to be more because you have someone else in there that's trying to eat as well as the consumer that was injured. So the biggest problem is probably that we don't have enough carriers, which creates additional people taking risk, which means there's more money here because they had to invest it in order to take the risk. And until that gets solved, we hang out here. There are interestingly enough, there are a lot of companies in the wings, or we'll call it on the crust of Florida, that are interested because of the legislation that was passed. We've already had one carrier come in since Ian, right? And right after while the fire is still kind of blazing. And there's probably 4 or 5 that we'll see in the next 12 months. When that paradigm turns, there's a lot of people that are going to make a lot of money right now. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in an insurance world for somebody to start a company. It's
crazy. It's amazing. Brian, unfortunately, we're out of time, but that was powerful. Appreciate you obviously talking a lot about insurance, but also from a business growth standpoint, you shared a lot of knowledge. So appreciate you and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, man. Appreciate your time.
As always, RP Experience, extremely thrilled to have you on here. We're here at the Venture X in the podcast studio. Don't forget to like, subscribe, stay tuned for the next. So, just a guest.